to share something with you. That might put me in a very negative light, yeah.
Relationships are not my forte.
See if someone grabbed up my wife or something, completely different ballgame.
I'll walk away from here, and this has been like a therapy session.
This is Ahmed for IFL TV, proudly sponsored by Everlast Privilege. So I've got Mike Costello on IFL TV just now. I know you're filming something with Matchroom today, and Eddie, just tell us what you're doing down here, please, Mike.
This is the end of year show, unscripted, where we're just going to look back over the year, the best fights, best knockouts, and have a bit of a laugh.
Fair enough, sounds good. Can you give me your highlight of 2022? Doesn't have to be British boxing. Anything that stood out on your part?
I think overall the performances, two of them from Dimitri Bivol, to do what he did against Canelo earlier in the year and then to follow that up against Gilberto Ramirez. There were many good judges who felt Ramirez could have beaten him, and yet in the end it just delivered a masterclass. It was absolutely brilliant in both fights. The way he took control against Canelo Alvarez, I'm not so sure his dominance was reflected in the scorecards, but those two performances overall during the year for me make up the highlight, and he for me is the fighter of the year.
Do you see him as the best light heavyweight in the world as well? Obviously you've got Artur Beterbiev defending his world titles against Anthony Yarde soon.
Yeah, I do, because again, looking at those two performances at the very highest level, it seems to me he's somebody who can adapt whatever the opposition has to offer. So I think he is the best light heavy in the world right now, yeah.
Okay. Mike, obviously, as well as the highs in boxing, we have had a few lows as well. How would you sum up the situation with Conor Benn? We saw a statement from him a couple of days ago. How do you reflect on the process so far? And obviously it's still ongoing with Conor Benn.
Yeah, look, it was difficult for him, for everybody around him, and for the sport at the time. And let's be fair, we still really don't know what the stain on the sport is going to be, if there is one, because he's saying quite recently now that his innocence is about to be proved. If that's the case, then everybody gets clarification. But as we stand here right now, still it's a very difficult situation for everybody around to solve until we know absolutely everything about the case.
I appreciate this might be a very difficult question to answer, but when you look back at previous cases, i.e. Canelo Alvarez, there wasn't actually any evidence that came out to prove his innocence. It was something he put out about Clenbuterol and Mexican beef, and some people have bought it and have accepted it and moved on. Some people still don't. How does Conor Benn factually and with evidence go about proving his innocence?
Well, if you look at another case, you look at the Dillian Whyte case, where he was allowed to box in the middle of 2019, and then I think it was 5 months later there was a statement from UKAD, United Kingdom Anti-Doping, that they were withdrawing their charge of an anti-doping violation. So if you look at that case, anything is possible. And I covered so many of these cases, I mean dozens and dozens and dozens of these cases when I worked in athletics, in track and field, working for the BBC. And no two cases are the same. There is this basic principle that if the substance is found in your system, you are responsible for it. But there have been situations in the past where the authorities have listened to the reasons that the athlete has put forward. It's rare, but it has happened.
Looking at it from the outside, like we all are, do you think he will ultimately serve a ban?
It's impossible to say, because they are individual cases. And I've seen an awful lot said and written about this case and attaching guilt to him, when actually most of us know very little about this case.
Well, another situation that has been slightly negative before we come on to some more positive things has been Lawrence Okolie. I'm sure you've seen some of the comments and interviews he's given in the last couple of days. Again, your thoughts and take on that situation with Lawrence Okolie and Matchroom?
Yeah, it's difficult. I think he's talking about moving in a business sense, and that he's still got a relationship with Eddie Hearn and with Matchroom, but he clearly wants to do what's best for him. Again, you know, what's gone on behind closed doors in terms of negotiations, I'm not privy to. So he clearly feels unhappy with his situation and wants to move on in a different direction, and that's his right, as long as legally the contract that he's got or had allows him to do that.
On to more positive things. It looks like we actually might get an undisputed fight in the heavyweight division for the first time in the full belt era in February, touted for Saudi Arabia, between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk. Is this what boxing needs, Mike?
I think it is, because the heavyweight division often dictates what happens across the rest of the sport. And in the era of 4 belts, there hasn't been a heavyweight champion who's held all 4 of those belts. And so it would be an historic night. And it happens to be between 2 men who I think would have not just survived but thrived in any era of the sport. So this would be a massive bonus, a massive plus for the sport.
What have you made of Tyson Fury's year with the wins over Dillian Whyte and Derek Chisora?
It's a case that for him, it's almost like ticking over, because those, for me, were 2 fights which in the end didn't provide any real threat to him, but still he produced on the night what he had to produce. And it's remarkable that this man can do what he does at the size that he is, and he's still, you might argue, not yet at his peak. There might still be more to come from Tyson Fury as he gets more and more championship experience, but he's already building himself into one of the best heavyweights of all time.
And in terms of Anthony Joshua, it's been heavily rumoured, and Dillian Whyte even a couple of days ago on social media said, I want this rematch with Anthony Joshua. Do you think that's the correct fight for Anthony Joshua next, the Dillian Whyte rematch?
I think it's a good fight for both of them at this stage. And I think Anthony Joshua has still got plenty more to offer the heavyweight division. I really do. And I think the next fight could be very important for him in terms of redirecting his career back on track.
There's been a debate over the last few days. Eddie Hearn has caused that, if you like. He said that, or maintains the fact that Anthony Joshua's resume is better than Tyson Fury's. How do you assess both men's resume, and which one do you see as the better one, Mike?
Well, I think if you look at both men, you look at the record of Tyson Fury, most of the men that he's beaten, you would fancy Anthony Joshua to beat, and likewise. But in terms of who would win if they come together, then it's a case of different styles and how they are mentally, psychologically at the time the fight comes around. At this stage, Tyson Fury would start favourite for me and for most people. But I think if you're looking at their resumes, they've both got outstanding resumes. And as I said earlier, for me, Tyson Fury might still be actually improving.
Okay, last one. I want you to name 3 fights as a boxing fan that you dream to see in 2023. We're going to exclude Fury Usyk from this because we've already mentioned that. So yeah, give me 3 fights that get you going, please, Mike.
I'd like to see, not necessarily giving you 3 A versus B, but I'd like to see Katie Taylor at Croke Park. I'd like to see Canelo here in the UK. And I'd love to see a fight down at super bantamweight between Juan Francisco Estrada and Bam Rodriguez. I think that could be the fight of 2023.
That would be a super fight. And who knows, Canelo Alvarez with John Ryder's win the other night against Zach Parker may well come to the UK. Mike, appreciate your time today. Have a great Christmas, and hopefully we'll catch up in the new year. All right, thank you.
You too. Thanks, mate.
I'm going to share something with you that might put me in a very negative light, yeah.
Relationships are not my forte.
See if someone grabbed up my wife or something, completely different ballgame.
I'll walk away from it, and this has been like a therapy session.